The rain fell softly on the glass windows of a skyscraper, the droplets tracing uneven paths as they merged into long streaks of water, blurring the lights of the city below. Inside one of the most prestigious hotels in Manhattan, the atmosphere was electric with the buzz of high-powered businessmen and women, all gathered for an exclusive networking event. It was a night for making deals, forging partnerships, and strengthening connections in the world of wealth and influence. Standing alone on the balcony, Ethan Blackwell, the young and charismatic CEO of Blackwell Tech, watched the rain with a contemplative look. He was a man of few words and fewer emotions. At only 32, Ethan had built his technology empire from the ground up, becoming a self-made billionaire. Yet, despite his success, there was a coldness to him, a detachment that few could penetrate. He had no time for small talk or socializing. His focus was always on the next big breakthrough, the next market innovation. Tonight, though, his mind wasn't entirely on business. He'd been forced to attend this gala, a part of the deal with investors who insisted on these social engagements as a way to network. The last thing he wanted to do was schmooze in a room full of people vying for his attention. But then he saw her. Ava Grant walked into the ballroom, her presence commanding the room in an effortless way, a breathtaking vision in a sleek, black evening gown. Ava was a striking woman with the poise of someone accustomed to the finest things in life. Born into a wealthy family in Connecticut, she had never wanted for anything. Yet her beauty and elegance were not simply a result of her privileged upbringing. She had a sharp mind, a businesswoman in her own right, though she preferred to stay out of the public spotlight. Her arrival didn't go unnoticed. Heads turned as she made her way through the crowd with the grace of someone who had been groomed for such events her entire life. Her smile was warm, her laughter light, yet there was an unmistakable air of confidence about her. She was not just the daughter of an influential family. She was a woman who had made her own mark on the world. Ethan felt a tug of curiosity, a rare sensation that caused him to watch her from across the room. He wasn't someone easily distracted, but there was something magnetic about Ava. Not her beauty, though she certainly had that, but something else. Something he couldn't quite place. Ava made her way to the bar, exchanging pleasantries with the people around her, but her eyes scanned the room as well. She had an agenda, as she always did at these events. She wasn't here to flirt with the rich and powerful. She was here for business. When their eyes met across the room, it was only for a moment, but it was enough to spark an undeniable connection. Ethan quickly looked away, his usual control slipping for just an instant. Ava, however, didn't seem to be bothered by his gaze. She continued her conversation with a group of investors, but Ethan couldn't help but notice her every time she moved across the room. There was something about the way she carried herself, confident but not arrogant, graceful yet strong. It was a quality that intrigued him. Just then, a familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. "Ethan, good to see you." He turned to find Sophia Waller, a prominent venture capitalist and one of his most reliable business partners, walking up to him with a smile. "Ethan, Sophia, always a pleasure." His tone was cordial but detached. He wasn't one to show much enthusiasm unless it was for something he truly cared about. "Sophia, I see you're distracted tonight. I think you're finally noticing her." She nodded discreetly toward Ava, who was now engaged in a lively discussion with a few other prominent figures in the tech industry. Ethan raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Sophia, Ava Grant, right? Daughter of Henry Grant, the billionaire industrialist." But don't be fooled by the last name. She's a savvy investor herself. Very sharp. I wouldn't be surprised if she's already looking for ways to get into your company. Smart woman, no doubt. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He had heard of Ava before, of course. Everyone in the business world had, but he'd never taken much interest in her. She was just another socialite who dabbled in business ventures. But tonight, there was something different in the way she commanded attention. A few minutes later, after talking to a few other people, Ethan found himself standing near Ava, who was now alone, sipping a glass of wine and observing the crowd. It was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. "Ethan, Ms. Grant." He nodded slightly, giving her a brief, polite smile. He hadn't meant to approach her, but now that they were face to face, his curiosity got the best of him. "Ava," she looked up at him, offering a smile that was both welcoming and a little enigmatic. "Mr. Blackwell, I didn't expect to see you here." Her voice was smooth, confident, with a hint of intrigue. "Ethan, I'm here under duress, honestly. A part of the deal with my investors. But it seems the gala has its benefits. It's not often I get to meet people who are more interested in the business than the champagne." "Ava, I couldn't agree more. There's always more value in the deals than in the distractions. What brings you to this side of the room, Mr. Blackwell? Are you just looking for another investor, or are you finally ready to work with someone who knows how to make things happen?" Ethan chuckled lightly. This woman was no stranger to the business world. She didn't pull punches. "Ethan, I don't usually find myself seeking partnerships at events like this, but who knows? Maybe we can have a conversation. I've been hearing your name more frequently in recent months. Perhaps you have something worth discussing, Ava. I'd say the same about you, Mr. Blackwell. Your company is making waves, and not just in tech. You're about to disrupt industries." There was a subtle challenge in her words, an invitation to something more than just idle small talk. For the first time that night, Ethan felt a spark of interest, not in the business proposal, but in the person standing in front of him. There was an energy about her, something that pulled him in, and for once he wasn't sure whether it was just her sharp intellect or the magnetism of her presence. The following week, Ethan Blackwell's office on the 52nd floor of Blackwell Tech was buzzing with activity. It was business as usual, meetings, projections, deadlines. But today, there was something different in the air. A sense of anticipation hung over his staff, as if they knew a major deal was on the verge of unfolding. Ethan, however, was lost in thought, staring out the window at the sprawling skyline. The city below seemed distant, even though it was right there, just beyond the glass. His mind wasn't on the city, but on the woman who had unknowingly disrupted his plans. Ava Grant, she, had managed to capture his attention without trying. They had exchanged pleasantries at the gala, but the conversations from that night had lingered longer than he expected. Her intelligence, her subtle challenge, and that air of calm confidence had sparked something inside him, a curiosity he hadn't felt in years. Normally, he wouldn't give anyone the time of day outside of his business interests. But Ava seemed to break through the icy barrier he had constructed around himself, and now, here he was, preparing for a meeting with her. A business meeting, but with a distinct undercurrent of tension he hadn't expected. 9 a.m. conference. Rumava stepped into the sleek conference room, her heels clicking softly on the polished wood floors. She wore a tailored suit in deep navy, her hair pulled back in a professional yet effortlessly chic style. She radiated confidence, but there was also a sense of composure that suggested she was always in control. She wasn't here to play games. She was here to make sure that Blackwell Tech and her firm, Grant Industries, had a future together. Ethan was already seated at the head of the table, reviewing the financial projections on his tablet. He looked up as she entered, his expression unchanged, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something curiosity, perhaps, or a challenge. "Ethan, Ms. Grant, welcome. I trust your trip over wasn't too difficult." He gestured to the seat opposite him. Ava, she took a seat, folding her hands on the table, her posture relaxed but authoritative. The weather was kind. "I'm sure we'll get straight to the point," though Ethan's lips twitched into a small smile, a rare sign of amusement. He liked that. Ava wasn't here to waste time with pleasantries. "Ethan, straight to the point, indeed. We've been reviewing the potential partnership between Blackwell Tech and Grant Industries, and I have to admit, your proposal is intriguing." Ava nodded, tapping a folder in front of her. She opened it, revealing a set of detailed reports, data points, and projections. "Ava, our companies are both on the cutting edge of tech, but we need to think bigger. The future of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity is intertwined, and right now, we have an opportunity to build something that could reshape the industry. Something more than just another project or product. This is about legacy, Ethan. This is about creating a foundation for the next generation." Ethan sat back, his eyes narrowing slightly as he listened. He hadn't expected her to come in with such a bold statement. But that was what made her interesting. She didn't shy away from big ideas. He was used to proposals and ideas, but the way she presented it, the conviction in her voice, gave him pause. "Ethan, you're talking about more than just merging resources. This is about pushing both of our companies into uncharted territory." "Ava, exactly. We don't need to just ride the wave. We need to make it. Our technologies can complement each other in ways that haven't even been thought of yet. Grant Industries has expertise in AI integration, and Blackwell Tech is a leader in cybersecurity. Together, we can create an entirely new platform, one that not only protects data, but anticipates the risks before they happen." Ethan leaned forward, his interest piqued. This was no ordinary proposal, but of course, that was to be expected from Ava Grant, someone who had never settled for mediocrity. "Ethan, it's ambitious, but it's also risky. You're asking me to commit to something that could either change the landscape of our industry or sink both our companies. And you expect me to do it without a guarantee." Ava didn't flinch. She wasn't asking for a guarantee. She was asking for trust. "Ava, I'm not asking for blind faith. What I'm offering is a calculated risk. If we fail, we fail together. But if we succeed, ... double quotes, she trailed off, her voice low but compelling, we could redefine the future of technology." Ethan studied her for a long moment. There was no sign of hesitation in her demeanor. Ava Grant wasn't like the other investors, the other business people he had worked with. She had an edge, an ambition that matched his own, and that, he realized, was what intrigued him the most. The discussion deepened. The meeting continued for another hour, with both parties delving deeper into the specifics of their proposed partnership. Ava's insights into the tech landscape were sharp and well-researched, and her understanding of how their two companies could complement each other was impressive. Ethan found himself drawn into the idea more than he had expected. As the conversation progressed, he found himself admiring Ava's determination and clarity. She wasn't afraid to challenge him, and in a world full of yes-men, That was refreshing. Yet there was also something else, something about her that made him want to see how far this partnership could go. Ethan, you don't do things halfway, do you? Ava, never. Mediocrity is for those who are comfortable. I don't know about you, but I'm not comfortable just maintaining the status quo. Ethan leaned back in his chair, considering her words. He had always been a man who thrived on ambition, on taking risks, on pushing boundaries. But he wasn't sure if he was ready to let someone else in, especially someone who seemed as driven, as uncompromising as he was. But Ava wasn't just any business partner. She was different. Ethan, all right, let's say we move forward with this. We'll need to bring in the right team, and we'll need a solid strategy. But you're right about one thing. If we succeed, the rewards will be more than just financial. Ava, that's the spirit. Together, we'll make history. It had been 2 weeks since the meeting between Ethan Blackwell and Ava Grant. The partnership between Blackwell Tech and Grant Industries was moving forward at a pace that surprised even Ethan. Ava's vision for the future of AI and cybersecurity was becoming more than just an idea. It was turning into a strategy that could potentially disrupt industries. And Ethan, despite his usual wariness, found himself more and more invested in the project. However, the deeper he got into the partnership, the more he began to notice subtle shifts in the atmosphere around him. Ava was becoming more involved in the day-to-day operations, contributing not only ideas but also taking a hands-on approach. This wasn't just a business collaboration for her, it was personal. Ethan had known that from the start, but now he found himself questioning what her true motivations were. And then there was Sophia Waller. Sophia Waller was one of Ethan's longest-standing business partners. She was shrewd, always calculating, and had a way of making her interests clear without ever being overt. He had trusted her implicitly for years, but lately there was an undercurrent of tension between them. She had always been supportive of his ideas, but now she seemed to be distancing herself. At first, Ethan had written it off as the stress of the business. But as things with Ava progressed, he started to wonder if there was more to it. Late afternoon, Blackwell Tech offices. Ethan sat at his desk, reviewing a batch of proposals when his phone buzzed. The name on the screen was Sophia Waller. He picked up the phone immediately. Ethan, Sophia, Ethan, we need to talk. I'm at the office, and I think we need to have a serious conversation about this partnership. You've entered with Ava Grant. Ethan's stomach tightened. He had suspected something was off, and now here it was. Ethan, I'm busy with the team right now. We can talk later. Sophia, no. Ethan, we talk now. In my office, please. Ethan's brow furrowed. Sophia didn't call him unless it was urgent. He stood up and walked across the office, his thoughts racing. Was Sophia worried about the financial risks of the partnership? Or was there something deeper, something personal? When he entered Sophia's office, he found her standing by the window, looking out over the skyline. She didn't turn to face him immediately, and the tension in the room was palpable. Ethan, Sophia, what's this about? If it's about the project, Sophia. She cut him off, her voice tight with concern. It's not just the project, Ethan, it's her. Ava Grant. Ethan's eyes narrowed, and he walked closer to her. He knew Sophia well enough to recognize the edge in her tone, the warning that she was about to say something he wasn't going to like. Sophia, you're too close to her. I don't trust her, Ethan. She's playing a game. And you're not seeing it. Ethan felt a flicker of annoyance, but he held his ground. Ethan, what are you talking about? We've discussed this. She's an ally. She's helping move the project forward. I'm not Sophia. She's not who she says she is, Ethan. She's been too focused, too persistent, too involved in your business. She's more than just a partner. She's got her own agenda. Ethan, you're wrong. Ava has been open and transparent from the beginning. Sophia finally turned around, her eyes hard. Sophia, no, Ethan. What she wants is far bigger than a mere business deal. She's trying to get into your company, trying to manipulate your position. And if you don't see that, you'll regret it. Ethan didn't know how to respond. Sophia had always been sharp, perceptive, and she knew the game better than anyone. But Ava had been nothing but professional with him, at least. That's what he had believed. Her vision for the future of tech had inspired him, and he had started to believe in her as more than just a businesswoman. But now that he heard it from Sophia, he couldn't shake the feeling that maybe he had missed something. Ethan, why would she do that? What's her endgame? Sophia, it's simple. Power. She wants to control the future of this company, Ethan, and you're letting her get too close. I've been watching her, Ethan. I'll handle this. Just stop worrying. Let me decide what happens. Sophia's eyes softened, but only slightly. She took a deep breath, clearly still concerned. Sophia, I'm just trying to protect you. Don't say I didn't warn you. Ethan left her office, the weight of her words heavy on his shoulders. As he walked back to his desk, he couldn't help but replay the conversation in his head. Was Sophia right? Had he been too quick to trust Ava? Or was he just overthinking it, letting personal emotions cloud his judgment? Later that evening, Grant Industries headquarters. Ava sat in her sleek office at Grant Industries, the city lights twinkling below. She had just wrapped up a meeting with her team, but her mind was elsewhere. She knew the partnership with Ethan was progressing well, but there was something about the way he had looked at her during their last meeting that suggested he was beginning to question her. She wasn't just another business partner in his eyes anymore. He was starting to see her as a threat, and she liked it. Ava had never been one to back down from a challenge. If anything, it drove her. But there was more to her agenda than just this deal. Ethan Blackwell was powerful, smart, and driven, everything she admired in a partner. But as much as she respected him, she knew she couldn't afford to be just another cog in the machine. She wanted more. She wanted control. Ethan Blackwell stood at the edge of his office window, looking out over the neon-lit skyline of Manhattan. The city, with all its buzz and energy, seemed distant now, as if he were looking at it through a veil. His mind wasn't on the city below, nor on the new projects that Blackwell Tech was spearheading. No, his thoughts kept returning to Ava Grant and the strange pull she had on him. Over the past few weeks, their partnership had deepened. Ava had become an integral part of the company's direction, pushing the development of their AI and cybersecurity initiatives with the same drive and brilliance that had made her a success in her own right. But with every meeting, every interaction, Ethan felt himself drawn closer to her, not just as a business partner, but as someone who had begun to slip past his carefully constructed walls. Sophia's warning echoed in his mind. She's playing a game, and you're not seeing it. He couldn't shake the doubt. Was Sophia right? Was he being naive? It was hard to tell. Ava had been professional, decisive, and impressive, and yet there was something about her that felt too calculated, too driven, The sound of his office door opening broke him from his thoughts. "Ava, we need to talk." Her voice was direct, her tone carrying a seriousness that immediately caught his attention. Ethan turned, his eyes narrowing slightly. Ava walked into the room, her gaze meeting his without hesitation. There was no smile, no casual greeting, just a quiet intensity. "Ethan, what's on your mind?" Ava stepped closer to the table, her heels clicking against the marble floor with each step. She didn't sit, and neither did Ethan. They both stood, facing each other, the tension in the room palpable. "Ava, you're pulling away." "I can feel it." "Something's off, Ethan. You've been distant in meetings. Your responses are colder, and you're questioning everything I say. We agreed to take this partnership seriously, but I'm starting to think you're backing out." Ethan didn't immediately respond. He studied her for a moment, weighing his words carefully. There was a part of him that wanted to reassure her, tell her it wasn't anything personal, but the other part, the one Sophia had awakened, was starting to question whether he was truly seeing the full picture. "Ethan, I'm not pulling away. I'm just taking time to think. The stakes are high, Ava. We're building something that could change the game, and I don't make decisions lightly." Ava's eyes softened for a split second, but only just. She had always known how to play the game, but this time the stakes felt different. Ethan wasn't just another business partner. She could sense that he was a man who valued trust above all else. And right now, he wasn't sure if he could trust her. "Ava, I understand. But you should also understand that I'm not here to waste time. I'm giving everything to this project, Ethan. If you're having doubts about the direction we're heading, I need to know. If you want out, now's the time to say it." Her words hung in the air, sharp and direct. For a moment, Ethan said nothing. He knew what he wanted to say, but he wasn't sure if it was the truth or just the lingering uncertainty Sophia had planted in his mind. "Ethan, I'm not having doubts about the project. I'm having doubts about us." The words were out before he could stop them. He saw a flicker of something in Ava's eye, surprise, perhaps, but more than that, it was a kind of recognition. She wasn't naive, and she understood the complexities of the situation better than anyone. "Ava Oos. Ethan, this is business. You knew what this partnership meant from the start. You knew that I don't mix personal with professional. My interest in this project has always been professional." Ethan's gaze flickered for a moment, but he could see the truth in her eyes. He knew she was telling him the truth, or, at least, her version of it. But there was something in the way she said the word us that made his heart beat a little faster. He wasn't sure if it was just the tension of the situation or something more. "Ethan, and yet you've made it personal. From the moment we first met, you've pushed, you've prodded, and now it feels like I can't separate the business from the personal. And I'm not sure if that's a risk I'm ready to take." Ava stood there for a moment, her gaze intense. She didn't back down. She didn't look away. In that moment, Ethan saw her for who she really was. Woman who had never settled, never compromised, and never let anyone dictate her path. But there was something else in her expression, a flicker of something softer, something that even she wasn't prepared for. "Ava, I'm not asking you to take a risk. Ethan, I'm asking you to trust me, just like I'm trusting you." Ethan felt a shift inside himself. She wasn't just speaking about business anymore. There was something deeper there, something unspoken. She wanted his trust, and as much as he wanted to trust her, he wasn't sure if he could. The wall he had built around himself was so high so fortified, that it felt impossible to let it come down. Ava's voice broke the silence again, but this time there was a slight edge to it. Ava, I didn't come here to play games. And if you think I'm here to manipulate you, you're wrong. You're the one who's been keeping me at arm's length. The air between them grew heavy. Ethan could feel his pulse quicken, the tension hanging thick in the room. But for the first time in their conversations, he saw something real in Ava's eyes. Not the calculating businesswoman, not the confident strategist, but something more vulnerable. Ethan, I'm not accusing you of manipulation. I just don't know who I'm dealing with anymore. I don't know if I can trust you. Ava took a deep breath, stepping back slightly. She seemed to gather herself, her face hardening again, the mask of professionalism slipping back into place. Ava, then I guess we both have something to figure out. Ethan, because if trust is something you can't offer, then we have no business continuing this partnership. Business doesn't work without trust. For the first time, Ethan wasn't sure how to respond. There were so many things he wanted to say, so many things he wanted to ask. But Ava was right. Without trust, there was nothing. And if he couldn't trust her, then this partnership, everything they had worked for, was nothing more than a house of cards waiting to fall. The days that followed the heated conversation with Ava Grant were some of the longest Ethan Blackwell had ever faced. It wasn't just the business pressures weighing on him, there was something else, something personal that gnawed at him. Since Ava had confronted him, he couldn't shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control, not just with the project, but with their fragile partnership. He knew Sophia's warnings were still in the back of his mind, but he also couldn't deny the raw energy that Ava brought to the table. Her ambition was contagious, but it also made him wary. How much of this partnership was genuine, and how much of it was part of a bigger game? He sat in his office late into the evening, staring at the blueprints for the new platform they were working on. The data was all there, promising to revolutionize the tech industry, but it was hard to focus. His mind kept drifting back to Ava's words, her voice, the way her eyes had locked onto his, with that mix of determination and vulnerability. The next morning, Grant Industries, headquarters across town. Ava was seated in her office, staring at her computer screen but not really seeing it. She had been up all night reviewing projections and figures, but it was no use. Her thoughts kept returning to her conversation with Ethan. For the first time, she wasn't sure how to move forward. She had always been in control, her business, her life, everything. But when it came to Ethan, she found herself facing an unfamiliar challenge. Ethan Blackwell wasn't like the others she had dealt with. He wasn't intimidated by her beauty or her power, and that only made him more intriguing. But now, after their confrontation, she wasn't sure if he would ever trust her fully. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Ava, come in." The door opened, and James Carter, her right-hand man, stepped in. He was tall, sharp, and always composed. His demeanor a perfect match for Ava's own professional demeanor. "James, we've finalized the report for Blackwell Tech. I'm ready to present it whenever you're ready." Ava gave him a nod, but her mind wasn't on the report. "Ava, James, I need to ask you something." "James, anything." "Ava, do you think I've gone too far with Ethan? Is it possible that I've misjudged the situation?" James raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the question. Ava wasn't someone who second-guessed herself, especially when it came to business. "James, I don't think you've misjudged him. Ethan is a smart man, and he's definitely playing the game. But you've done everything right, everything that was needed to push forward with this partnership, Ava sighed, leaning back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Ava, I don't know anymore. I feel like every move I make, he's pulling away. It's like he's afraid to trust me, and I'm not sure how much longer I can keep up this act. James hesitated for a moment, considering his words carefully. James, you know that trust doesn't come easily with Ethan. He's been burned before, and I think that's what you're dealing with. But if you really want to make this work, you need to show him that you're in this for the long haul. If you're looking for quick answers, you won't get them. Ava looked up at him, her expression unreadable. She had always known that the best relationships, business or otherwise, were built on trust. But right now, it felt like trust was something Ethan wasn't willing to give. Not to her, not yet, Ava. I can't afford to wait. James, we're on the edge of something huge, and every day we wait, we risk losing it all. James didn't respond immediately. He simply nodded, offering her the space she needed. Late afternoon, Blackwell Tech officer Ethan stood in front of his window again. The same view, the same city below him. But today, it felt different. He had spent the past few days evaluating every move he'd made, every decision he'd allowed Ava to influence. It wasn't just business anymore. It was personal, and that was what unsettled him the most. He had to admit Ava's presence, her ambition and her sharp intellect were starting to get under his skin. He was drawn to her, despite his best efforts to maintain distance. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that it wasn't just her abilities that kept him intrigued, was something else. Something personal. He had heard nothing from her since their conversation, and part of him was relieved. But another part, the part that had always craved the next challenge, missed her directness, her intensity. That was when his phone buzzed. The name on the screen was Ava Grant. Ethan's office assistant, Blackwell. Ava, Ethan. Her voice was steady, but there was a tension in it, one he recognized immediately. Ava, I've been thinking. I don't think we should let this slip away. We've built something here, and we're on the brink of something groundbreaking. But I can't do it alone. You're a crucial part of this. Ethan leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. Ethan, I've never questioned the potential of this partnership, Ava, but I need to know that this is real, that we're in this together. For the right reasons. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, and for the first time, Ethan could hear a hint of vulnerability in her voice. Ava, I've been playing the game for a long time. Ethan, but this isn't just about business for me. It's about something bigger. I want this to work. For both of us. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. There it was, again, the pull, the connection. He didn't want to admit it, but the truth was clear. He couldn't afford to let Ava slip away. Ethan, all right. We move forward together. Ava together. The call ended, and Ethan sat back in his chair, staring at the screen in front of him. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he had made the right decision. The question was no longer whether they could succeed, was whether they could trust each other enough to make it happen. The air in Ethan Blackwell's office was thick with tension. It had been a week since he and Ava had made their decision to move forward with the partnership. And while things were progressing smoothly on paper, the undercurrent of unspoken words between them had only grown stronger. Their dynamic was shifting. What had started as a strictly professional arrangement was slowly becoming something more complicated. Ethan was no stranger to high-stakes situations. He had spent years navigating the cutthroat world of tech, making deals that could either propel his company to new heights or crash it into oblivion. But with Ava, it felt different. Every move he made in their partnership felt like it came with a personal cost. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't entirely sure if the risk was worth it. He sat at his desk, staring at the financial projections for their joint venture, but his mind wasn't on numbers. He couldn't shake the image of Ava, her confidence, her sharp mind, and the quiet intensity that she carried with her, even when she wasn't speaking. He had spent so much of his life being emotionally detached, refusing to let anyone in but with her. Everything felt different. The sound of a knock broke him from his thoughts. "Ethan, come in." Ava walked into the room with her usual composed demeanor, but today there was something in her eyes of sharpness, a sense of determination that he hadn't seen before. "Ava, Ethan, we need to talk." Ethan's brow furrowed, a flicker of apprehension crossing his face. They had already been through their fair share of tough conversations, but there was something about the way Ava said those words that made his stomach tighten. "Ethan, about what?" "Ava, about us. About how this partnership is going forward." Ethan stood up from his desk, walking over to the window as he ran a hand through his hair. He didn't want to admit it, but the conversation he had been avoiding was finally here. "Ethan, I thought we were past all the doubts. We're moving forward with the project, Ava. That's what matters, right?" Ava stepped closer, her heels clicking softly on the floor. There was no hesitation in her movements, but the weight of her presence was undeniable. "Ava, it's not just about the project anymore. Ethan, we've crossed a line. What we're doing, it's become personal, and I can't pretend it isn't." Ethan turned to face her, his expression hardening slightly. "Ethan, what are you saying? That I'm making this personal?" "I'm just trying to keep things professional." Ava's gaze softened, but only for a moment. She wasn't here to play games, and she knew Ethan wasn't either. But the lines between personal and professional had started to blur, and neither of them could ignore it anymore. "Ava, I'm not saying you're making it personal, but I can see it. I can feel it. We both know it's not just business anymore. There's something else here, and the longer we ignore it, the messier it's going to get." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to regain some semblance of control over his emotions. He had never allowed himself to be swayed by personal feelings until now. "Ethan, you're right. There's more at play here than just business. I've been trying to ignore it, but I can't. I don't know if it's because of you, or because of how this partnership is shaping up, but something's changing. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a dangerous one." Ava stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made his heart race. There was no pretension in her demeanor, now just raw, unfiltered honesty. "Ava, I've never done anything halfway, Ethan. You know that this is more than just a business deal to me. It's about creating something real, something lasting, and I want that with you. Not just in business, but in whatever this is between us." The words hung in the air, heavy and charged. For a moment, Ethan didn't know how to respond. He had always been able to compartmentalize, keep his personal life separate from his work. But with Ava, it was impossible. Every conversation, every look, felt like it was leading somewhere he wasn't prepared to go. "Ethan, Ava, you don't know what you're asking. This business we've built, it's everything. I've sacrificed so much to get to this point. And now, you want me to risk it all for something I'm not even sure I can control." Ava's expression softened, but her voice remained steady. "Ava, I'm not asking you to risk anything, Ethan. I'm asking you to trust me. Trust us. Whatever this is, it doesn't have to take away from the business. It can only make it stronger. But we can't keep pretending like it's just about numbers and projections. There's more at stake now. Ethan stood there, frozen in place. Her words resonated with him, louder than anything he had heard in a long time. He wasn't sure if he could trust her, or if trusting her meant losing everything he had worked for. But the pull was undeniable, Ethan. And what if we both fail? What if this whatever it is goes wrong, and we're left with nothing? Ava took another step forward, closing the distance between them. She didn't hesitate. Her voice was calm but unwavering. Ava, then we failed together. But at least we know we gave it everything. The silence between them stretched on, and for the first time in weeks, Ethan allowed himself to feel something other than uncertainty. He looked into her eyes and saw the sincerity, the raw emotion beneath her professional exterior. He saw someone who wasn't afraid to take risks, someone who believed in the same vision he did. Ethan, all right, together, but no more secrets, no more games. If we're doing this, it's all in. No turning back. Ava's lips curved into a small but genuine smile. She reached out, her hand brushing against his. A silent promise between them. Ava, no turning back. Later that evening, Blackwell Tech offices, the sun set. Ethan sat back in his chair, the weight of the day pressing down on him. The conversation with Ava had been a turning point. He knew now that things couldn't stay the same, that they were already in too deep. But there was a part of him, an unknown part, that was willing to take the risk. Just then, his phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Sophia Waller. Sophia, Ethan, we need to talk. I'm not sure you realize what you're walking into with Ava. Be careful. Ethan's jaw tightened as he read the message. Sophia had warned him before, but now he wasn't sure who to believe. Was he truly walking into something dangerous, or was he simply afraid of what it meant to let someone in? He stared at the phone for a moment longer before locking it and tossing it aside. His mind was made up. Whatever this partnership with Ava was going to be, he was going to see it through. But as he sat there, staring at the empty office around him, he couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning of a much larger, much riskier journey, one that would test not only his business acumen, but his heart as well. The weeks that followed Ethan and Ava's decision to fully commit to their partnership were a blur of meetings, late-night strategizing, and breakthrough moments. The collaboration between Blackwell Tech and Grant Industries had quickly gained momentum, and the project they were developing, an AI-driven cybersecurity platform, was making waves in the tech world. Their combined efforts had attracted attention from major investors, and the future looked bright. Or so it seemed on the surface. But beneath the polished exterior, cracks were starting to appear. As their professional lives intertwined more deeply, the tension between Ethan and Ava continued to build. What had begun as a clear-cut business relationship was growing increasingly complex, both emotionally and personally. Each of them had made concessions, but neither was truly prepared for the depth of the challenge they now faced. Ethan found himself consumed by the project, pouring every ounce of his energy into its success. But the line between his professional and personal feelings toward Ava was becoming harder to distinguish. The trust he had so cautiously built with her now seemed fragile, and the more they worked together, the more he feared it might all come crashing down. Meanwhile, Sophia Waller's warnings lingered in his mind. She had warned him that Ava was playing a dangerous game, but Ethan had brushed it off as jealousy or fear of losing his trust. Still, Sophia had been his partner for years, had known him better than anyone, and her words had started to gnaw at him. Was she right? Was Ava hiding something? 2 days later, Blackwell Tech officer's Ethan sat in his office, reviewing a final draft of a proposal for new investors. The buzz of the city outside his window seemed distant, and all he could focus on was the screen in front of him. His mind, however, wasn't entirely on the numbers. He found himself thinking about Avia, about how they'd crossed so many boundaries in such a short time. She had become an anchor for him in many ways, but also a challenge. Someone he wanted to trust completely, but whose every move seemed to leave him questioning her motives. There was a knock on the door. Ethan. Come in. Ava walked in without hesitation, her usual confidence radiating from her. She had a folder in her hand, the same professional demeanor she always had, but there was something different about her today. Ethan could feel it the moment she entered the room. Ava, we need to talk about the next steps for the investors. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He motioned for her to sit, but he remained standing, his back to her, still lost in thought. Ethan, sure, let's talk. But there's something we need to address first. Ava raised an eyebrow, a flicker of curiosity crossing her features. Ava, what's that? Ethan turned slowly to face her, his eyes hardening slightly. This was the moment he had been avoiding, the moment when things could no longer stay unspoken. Ethan, what's really going on between us, Ava? I can't keep pretending it's just business anymore. We've crossed a line, and I'm not sure how much longer we can keep this up. Ava stood still, her gaze unwavering, but there was a subtle shift in her posture. The easy confidence she usually wore seemed to falter for just a second, replaced by something deeper, more guarded. Ava, you're right. We've crossed a line. But that doesn't change anything. We made a deal professionally and personally. If you're questioning whether we can still work together, then maybe it's not just business we need to figure out. Ethan felt a pang of frustration, but he couldn't shake the underlying truth in her words. The lines had blurred, and now they were both caught in something that neither of them had fully understood. Ethan, I don't know if we can keep doing this. Ava, every time I try to separate what we're building from what we're becoming, it all falls apart. I can't just focus on the project anymore. I'm starting to care about you in a way that I shouldn't, that I don't know how to handle. Ava stepped closer, the tension between them crackling in the air. Her voice softened, but the weight of her words was no less heavy. Ava, you think I don't feel it too, Ethan. I'm not blind. I know this is complicated, but you and I both know that the risks we're taking with this project aren't just business risks anymore. It's personal, and if we're not careful, we could lose everything. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had always been able to compartmentalize his life, separating business from personal, keeping control over his emotions. But now, standing in front of Ava, he felt as if the walls he had built so carefully were crumbling, piece by piece. Ethan, and if we fail, Ava, if this all falls apart, where does that leave us? I can't afford to lose everything. I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let something like this ruin everything. Ava's expression softened, her voice taking on a quieter, more vulnerable tone. Ava, I'm not asking you to let go of everything. Ethan, I'm asking you to trust me, to trust us. Whatever happens, we face it together. We've been through too much to back out now. There was a long pause, and Ethan found himself searching her eyes for some sign, some clue that she was telling him the truth. Her gaze was steady, unwavering. Ethan, and what if trusting you means putting everything on the line? Ava stepped even closer, her voice barely a whisper. Ava, then that's what we do. The space between them seemed to disappear as she reached out, her hand brushing against his. The contact sent a shock through him, and for a moment, he didn't know if it was the adrenaline of the situation or something else entirely. But in that brief touch, he felt the weight of what they had created and what it could mean for both of them. Late night Blackwell, tech officer's Ethan, sat alone in his office after the meeting, his thoughts racing. He had been honest with Ava, but honesty didn't always bring clarity. The conversation had left him torn. He had wanted to keep his distance, to protect himself, but now that line had been crossed. He knew he was no longer in control. He had let himself care about her too much. Just as he was about to pick up the phone to review the latest report from the investors, his office door creaked open. He didn't need to look up to know who it was. Sophia, Ethan. We need to talk. Sophia Waller walked into the room, her expression unreadable. Ethan's pulse quickened. He had been expecting this, but the weight of her presence still had the same impact it always did. Ethan, I'm not sure I'm in the mood for another lecture. Sophia, this isn't a lecture. This is about survival. About making sure you don't lose everything you've built. Because if you think I'm the only one who sees what's happening with Ava, you're wrong. Ethan's jaw tightened. He knew Sophia was never one to mince words, but the way she said Ava's name sent a ripple of unease through him. Ethan, what do you mean? Sophia didn't hesitate. She had always been blunt, and this was no exception. Sophia, you think she's on your side. You think she's in this for the same reasons you are. She's playing you, Ethan, and when she's done, she'll take everything you have, and you won't even see it coming. Ethan stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. The anger that had been simmering inside him flared. Ethan, enough. Sophia, I don't need your warnings anymore. Ava and I are moving forward with the project, and that's final. Sophia's eyes hardened, her voice low. Sophia, I hope you're right. But remember, Ethan, sometimes the biggest danger doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within. The days following Ethan's confrontation with Sophia were filled with tension. He couldn't shake the weight of her words, and yet, at the same time, he couldn't ignore the undeniable pull he still felt for Ava. She had pushed him, challenged him, and made him see things differently, things he had never allowed himself to consider. Despite Sophia's warnings, Ethan couldn't help but wonder if he was letting fear cloud his judgment. He had always been a man of reason, calculating risks and making decisions based on logic. But with Ava, everything had shifted. It wasn't just about the project anymore. It wasn't even about the trust that had slowly built between them. It was about something deeper, something more primal that he hadn't been prepared for. Late night Blackwell, tech officer's Ethan stood in his office, gazing out at the sprawling city below. The lights of Manhattan twinkled in the distance, a stark contrast to the darkness of the room behind him. His thoughts were racing, but his mind kept coming back to one thing. Ava. The phone on his desk buzzed, breaking his reverie. It was a message from Ava. Ethan, I think we need to talk. I'm in the office now. Can you meet me? His pulse quickened. There was no hesitation in her message, no attempt to sugarcoat things. It was direct, like everything she did. Ethan, I'll be there in 10 minutes later, Grant Industries. Headquarters. Ethan arrived at Ava's office within the hour. The building was quiet, the hum of the city outside barely audible through the thick glass windows. Ava's office was the same as always, sleek, minimal, but with a certain warmth that contrasted her usually composed demeanor. She was standing by the window, looking out at the city, her back to him. When he entered, she didn't immediately turn around. Instead, she took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what was to come. "Ethan, you wanted to talk." Ava turned slowly, her gaze locking onto his. There was no uncertainty in her expression, no hesitation, just the same fierce intensity that had always drawn him in. "Ava, I know what you're thinking. Ethan, and I need you to listen to me." Her voice was firm, but there was a vulnerability in her eyes that caught him off guard. Ava wasn't one to show weakness. She wasn't the type of woman who bared her soul easily. But something had shifted. Ethan could feel it. "Ethan, what do you need me to hear?" Ava walked towards him, her heels clicking against the polished floor, each step purposeful. When she was close enough, she stopped, a mere foot away. Her eyes searched his, as if looking for something. "Ava, I'm not here to play games, Ethan. I know the risks. I know how much we're both putting on the line, but I'm asking you to trust me completely, not just in business, but in everything." In us, Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to say something, to deny the pull he felt toward her, but he couldn't. His words felt caught in his throat. "Ethan, what are you asking from me, Ava?" She hesitated, just for a moment, before she spoke again, her voice low. "Ava, I'm asking for everything. I'm asking you to stop holding back. Stop thinking so much. Stop questioning everything. If we're doing this, if we're really doing this, we need to be all in. And that includes trusting each other with everything we have." Ethan felt his heart race. Her words struck a chord deep inside him, but the fear still lingered. He had always played it safe, always calculated the risks. But with Ava, everything was different. He had spent years building this empire, protecting it from the dangers of the world. But was he willing to risk it all for this? For her, Ethan, and what if we fail? What if all of this, us, crashes down? Ava took another step forward, her hand gently brushing against his. The touch was electric, sending a jolt of warmth through him. Ava, then we fail together. But we won't fail, Ethan. Not if we do this right. Not if we trust each other. You and I, we were unstoppable. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt a shift within himself. The walls he had spent years building, the walls that had kept him safe and protected, were beginning to crumble. He had spent his life afraid of what might happen if he let someone else in. But with Ava, he couldn't ignore it any longer. There was no turning back. Ethan, all right. Together, no more holding back. No more doubts. Ava's eyes softened, her expression shifting into something that almost felt like relief. She nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Ava, no more doubts. And in that moment, everything changed. They had crossed a line, one that neither of them could uncross. The boundaries that had once kept them apart, that had once kept them professional, were gone. The trust was there, but so was the danger. The next morning, Blackwell Tech officers Ethan walked into the office the next morning, a renewed sense of determination in his step. He had made the decision, he had committed, not just to the project, but to Ava, and with that decision came a weight he had never carried before. The stakes had never been higher, and the risk had never been more personal. As he sat down at his desk, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Sophia. Sophia, Ethan. We need to talk, now. He stared at the screen for a long moment, the weight of her words hitting him all over again. He had been avoiding this conversation, hoping that Sophia's concerns would fade. But now, with everything on the line, he couldn't ignore it any longer. Ethan, I'm on my way. Later, Sophia's office. Ethan walked into Sophia's office with a calm but resolute demeanor. She was standing by the window, arms crossed, her gaze focused on the city below. As he entered, she turned toward him, her expression serious. Sophia, I don't know what's going on with you and Ava, but I'm not going to stand by and watch you ruin everything. Ethan clenched his jaw. He had known this conversation was coming, but hearing it out loud still stung. Ethan, what do you mean, ruin everything? Sophia, I've seen this before. People get too emotionally involved, and they lose sight of the bigger picture. Ava is using you, Ethan. She's playing a game, and you're too blind to see it. Ethan's chest tightened, the familiar frustration building inside him. He had been warned about Ava before, but now, hearing it from Sophia, someone he trusted, made the doubt gnaw at him more than ever. Ethan, I'm not blind, Sophia. I know what I'm doing. Sophia, do you? Because I can't watch you destroy yourself over someone who's only looking out for her own interests. Ethan stood still, torn between the loyalty he felt for Sophia and the trust he had placed in Ava. The weight of his decisions felt heavier than ever. Ethan, I have to make my own choices, Sophia. And right now, I'm choosing to trust Ava. You don't have to like it, but that's where I stand. Sophia didn't respond immediately. She just looked at him, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed, shaking her head. Sophia, I hope you're right. I really do. But remember, Ethan, in this world, people will use you, even the ones you trust the most. And when that happens, it's already too late. Ethan left her office, the weight of her words following him. He had made his choice. Now, he could only hope he hadn't made a mistake. The city lights flickered outside Ethan's office window, but inside, the room felt suffocating. He sat at his desk, the quiet hum of the air conditioning the only sound filling the space, but his mind was racing. Ava's presence still lingered in his thoughts, her words echoing in his head. They had crossed a line that, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. He had made his choice, but as the days went by, the weight of that decision began to feel heavier. The partnership with Ava Grant was moving at a pace neither of them had expected, and despite the success of the project so far, Ethan felt like they were walking a tightrope. One misstep, and it could all come crashing down. Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the digital screen in front of him, but his eyes didn't focus on the numbers. They wandered to the unopened messages from Sophia, each one more urgent than the last. He hadn't responded to any of them. He didn't know how to dot. Sophia had always been his anchor. She had been there from the beginning, the one person who had his back, no matter what. But lately, everything about their relationship had been strained. Her warnings about Ava, her increasing concern, her lack of trust, it was starting to push Ethan into a corner. Just as he was about to open one of Sophia's messages, his phone rang. The name on the screen made his heart skip a beat. Ava, Ethan. We need to talk. Later that evening, Ava's office had a view just as impressive as Ethan's. But it felt different here. More personal, somehow. Maybe because it wasn't just business anymore. It never had been, not between them. They had both pretended it was, but the truth was now undeniable. Ava was already standing by the window when Ethan entered, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of the city lights. She didn't turn to face him immediately, giving him time to take in the scene. The room was quiet, and for the first time, there was no urgency in the air. It felt like a moment suspended in time. "Ethan, you wanted to talk." Ava finally turned to face him, her expression unreadable. She was still as composed as ever, but there was something in her eyes, something that told him this conversation wouldn't be like the others. "Ava, we're at a crossroads, Ethan. You know that, right?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He had known it for a while, but hearing her say it out loud made it feel real. "Ethan, I know, but I'm not sure how much further we can go like this. It feels like we're pushing everything to the limit, and it's not just the project anymore. It's us. And I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending it's not personal." Ava took a step forward, her gaze softening, but still holding that intensity that had always drawn him in. "Ava, I'm not pretending anything. Ethan, this is personal. I can't lie about it anymore, and neither can you. What we have, it's not just a business partnership. It's more than that. And I think we both know it." Ethan closed his eyes briefly, taking in a deep breath. He had tried to keep things professional, tried to maintain the distance he'd always been comfortable with. But now, standing in front of her, he realized that he had let his guard down in ways he hadn't even acknowledged. "Ethan, what are you asking from me, Ava? What do you want?" Ava stepped closer to him, her voice barely a whisper. "Ava, I want you to trust me. I want you to trust us. This, whatever this is between us, could be something incredible. But only if we stop holding back. If we stop pretending that the lines haven't already blurred." Ethan's heart raced. The vulnerability in her voice was something he hadn't expected. He had always seen Ava as someone in control, someone who never let emotions cloud her judgment. But now, he saw a different side of her, one that mirrored the uncertainty he felt deep inside himself. "Ethan, I'm scared. Ava, I'm scared of losing everything I've worked for. And if this goes wrong, it won't just be the business. It'll be us. I don't know if I can handle that." Ava reached out, her hand gently touching his arm. The touch was enough to make his breath catch in his throat. "Ava, if we fail, Ethan, we fail together. But if we succeed, if we truly give this everything we have, there's nothing we can't achieve." Ethan stood there, looking into her eyes, feeling the weight of her words. There was no turning back now. If he was going to do this, if he was going to fully trust her, he had to let go of the fear. He had to risk it all, Ethan, together. No more doubt. No more games. Ava nodded, a small smile crossing her lips. It wasn't the smile of a businesswoman, but of someone who was finally letting herself be vulnerable. And for the first time, Ethan realized that maybe he was willing to take the leap. The next day, Blackwell Tech offices. The following day, Ethan made a decision. He called a meeting with the executive team and announced a bold new direction for the company. The collaboration with Grant Industries would no longer be just another project. Heat would be the centerpiece of Blackwell Tech's future. Ava was right. If he was going to move forward, if he was going to make this partnership work, he had to embrace it fully. And that meant not just with his mind, but with his heart. They were in this together, and the risks were real, but the potential was limitless. As the meeting wrapped up and his team filed out, Ethan stood by the window once again, looking out at the city. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he was willing to face it head-on. With Ava by his side, the following months were a whirlwind. The project between Blackwell Tech and Grant Industries continued to progress at an unprecedented pace. What had started as a partnership born out of necessity had blossomed into something greater, something personal. The synergy between Ethan and Ava was undeniable, and as their work together deepened, so did their connection. But there was always a shadow in the back of Ethan's mind. The risks they had taken, the trust they had placed in each other, it could all fall apart at any moment. But for now, that didn't matter. They had built something worth fighting for, and that was enough. Sophia had warned him. She had told him that people would use him, that trust was a dangerous thing. But in the end, Ethan realized that without trust, there was nothing. Business was just business. But with Ava, they had something more. As Ethan and Ava stood together on the rooftop of Grant Industries headquarters, watching the sun set over the city, they knew one thing for certain. They had crossed every line, taken every risk, and now they had a future to build. Together, Ethan, we did it. Ava smiled, her eyes sparkling with the same fire that had drawn him to her from the start. Ava, no. Ethan, we're just getting started. And for the first time, Ethan truly believed it.